Namaste, everyone. Thank you for joining today's exciting event, World Bindi Day 2020. I'll be your moderator for this very brief and exciting event. My name is Arnav Kejriwal. I'm the president of Hindu Students Council. As we all know, today is the first day of Navaratri, and we decided to make this the special day where we take our Hindu pride and we showcase it to the world with the symbol of the Bindi. And our very first speaker is going to be the person who is the brains of this whole idea, who's starting this movement to take the Bindi and show the world that we are not done kind of calling ourselves Hindu. So I'll keep my message short, but given that this is our inaugural event, and obviously with COVID, all of us are stuck at home, not able to celebrate Navaratri in the traditional way, going to Garbas, going to the Mandir. So what we ask you to do is please wear your Bindi, please wear a tilak today, and as you can see down below, hashtag on social media, World Bindi Day and Bindi Pride, and show the world your pride and your Bindi. So with that, I'd like to welcome Archita, the founder of Mission Bindi, and she is the very person that came up with this idea of hosting a World Bindi Day. Archita is a high school student from Massachusetts, and she's gonna be giving the welcome introductory message for World Bindi Day 2020. Welcome, Archita.
Namaste. Thank you, Arnav, and hello everyone. Namaste and happy Navaratri and wishes to all. It's nice to see many familiar faces with the Bindi or tilak. That's really great. Actually, like a couple of days back, I called my grandmother in India to just tell her, "Oh, Mama, we're celebrating the inaugural World Bindi Day. You have to come. You have to be a part of this." And then she was like, "What is this World Bindi Day?" And then I replied saying that, it's a day where people all over the world wear the Bindi, and it's where we celebrate the Bindi, the true significance of the Bindi, and Hindus worldwide will start feeling comfortable with their culture. And it's just a day where we happily put the Bindi and tilak on the foreheads and show how beautiful it is. Now, for this, she replied, "Whatever you're saying is fine, but I wear the Bindi every single day, 365 days of almost all of my life. So what's new today?" I didn't have an answer to that question. From a generation where women used to put the Bindi almost every single day as a part of their daily lives, to a generation where girls are no longer putting the Bindi even for a single day in the year. There you see it, right before us. A generational change is happening. You might all agree how the Bindi has slowly been fading away from the earlier generation to the current generation. We are, fortunately or unfortunately, at these times where we are seeing these things happening right before our eyes. If we don't celebrate World Bindi Day now, then in 50 to 60 years, we might be lining up before the museum, buying museum tickets to see how the Bindi was during our times. It's unfortunate, but it's true. The tilak is a little ahead in the more advanced stage of erosion. This fading away of the Bindi is happening everywhere, not only in the United States, but also in India at a more faster pace. Today, Hinduism faces many challenges, but I strongly believe by rallying behind the Bindi, will counter a lot of opposing narratives. This is the reason I thought that we should do something more tangible to save this Bindi and bring it back to the mainstream society. I have started this mission to save the Bindi. As a part of Mission Bindi, I want to realize this bigger dream of saving and retaining the Bindi with multiple initiatives. We take up any project related to the Bindi, be it working on submitting a Bindi emoji or tilak emoji, or taking up any research study that's related to the Bindi. I am still in the starting phase and I want to do a lot more here. I myself have many unanswered questions. For example, we humans are putting the Bindi fine, but why exactly does Devi herself put the Bindi? I want to know that. I want to explore the earliest mentions of the Bindi as it was mentioned in our scriptures. World Bindi Day is one of those extremely ambitious initiatives where Hindus here and worldwide can showcase their solidarity by putting the bindi and showing that we are not alone. We need this celebration. We need a stronger assertion that there is nothing wrong with our bindi and with our culture. With World Bindi Day, Hindus can bring out and start celebrating those aspects of Hindu culture, which most Hindus were not comfortable earlier because of various reasons. It is not difficult. The bindi is still there in the hearts and minds of many contemporary women. All we need to do is make a cautious attempt to assert the real glory of the bindi and the real meaning behind the bindi. And I'm pretty sure women will be flaunting their graceful presence of the bindi and their designer suits and their branded bags and be that progressive woman, but still put on a nice bindi. We need to bring the bindi back into the mainstream society. Coming to what it is to me here in the United States, and it's just my pursuit to have my own identity. This Bindi Day is a connection to my culture, to my family, and my values. My mission is to have a graceful presence of who I am in these diverse environments. I am proud that America values diversity, and we can be proud Americans and still retain our culture. But if Hindus don't want to retain their own cherished traditions, then who can help us? My grandmother got her bindi from her mother, and she from her mother. And I'm not sure for how many generations the chain continued. The chain never even broke. Even if there were some hurdles along the way, they fought for their identity and freedom and somehow were able to retain this tradition for us. After all that they have done, who are we to just shed what they did? Now, Shefali ji will be speaking, and she knows more than me on how Indian women, especially Goan women, fought for their bindi and their identity. Even though I didn't hear her speak yet, I know that she agrees that she is what she is because she knows what her ancestors did to fight for their culture. Now, I've been recently getting emails about why retain the bindi? Why not the tilak? Let me first fight my battle to retain what we still have, to retain what we still hold. Once women come in line, men will start following us. Since today morning, I've been seeing some really nice, colorful bindi pictures. Please continue to share your bindi pictures, post your bindis, and once you're done, come back to those handles and check those pictures out for a nice visual treat. Thank you.
Thank you, Archita. And it's so wonderful hearing such inspiring words on, why we need a World Bindi Day. It's easy to say, oh, let's put the bindi on and tweet and message and have joy, but it's also very important that we understand the seriousness of what it means to carry the bindi, the weight behind it. And hearing such eloquent words from someone, like yourself that is going through those battles every day in your classroom and in Chinmaya Mission and wherever else you might be, it's extremely inspiring to the rest of us. So with that, thanks for the introduction, Archita. And as you mentioned, I think our next speaker needs really no introduction. Srimati Shefali Vedya is a very known writer and activist based in Pune. She's one of the co-conveners of Indic Academy, and she's always working to bring awareness to the persecution of Hindus and the importance of retaining our Hindu legacy in different parts of the world. And as Archita mentioned, one of the works that Shefali ji is most known for is her talks and works on the Goan Inquisition. So now I'd like to invite Srimati Shefali Vedya to speak on the civilizational legacy of the Bindi. Namaste and welcome, Shefali ji.
Namaste, just give me 1 minute. I'll just change my charger. My battery is really low suddenly.
Sure, no problem. So I guess in the meantime, I have already been on my phone on Twitter and taken my pictures of the day. I think people are still probably getting up, getting their Navratri gear together, probably some home house garba and whatnot. So while you guys are getting ready, I expect to start seeing some pictures come in on my phone. I'm really looking forward to seeing World Bindi Day and Bindi Pride start to go viral on the Twitter sphere. So,
Okay, I'm back.
okay, Shefali ji, it's all yours.
Namaste, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak on the World Bindi Day. And I was listening to Archita very intently right now. And as she was talking, there were so many thoughts swirling in my mind. The first one was when she said that if we don't reclaim the bindi right now, then after a few years, we would have to go to a museum to see what a bindi used to look like. And it's not a far-fetched thought, because even in India, when I was researching for this subject, I found that there is an article about how the bindi is disappearing from the Indian ads, television ads. Till about 10 years ago, when you showed a woman in the ads, the woman, the mother or the sister or whoever, she used to wear a bindi. If not a really big bindi, then a small bindi at least. But of late, it doesn't matter what is the woman shown as, whether she's shown as an executive, whether she's shown as a homemaker, whether she's shown as anyone, a mother, grandmother, the bindi has disappeared. And this is happening, as Archita said, right in front of our eyes. And if this is happening in India, where the masses still wear the bindi, it's scary, because what is shown on television is usually a reflection of what is seen in the society. And you see this in the films as well. Till a few years ago, for all the award functions, all the actresses, they wore saris and they wore a bindi with pride. Then the saris started dwindling. Now some of them wear saris, but there is no bindi. The bindi has gone. And but now you'll ask me, why should anyone care for the bindu? What's so great about the dot? It's not just a dot. A bindi is not just a dot, it is a 5,000-year-old civilizational thought. If you go back to the Sindhu Saraswati civilization and if you look at the artifacts that were found in the excavations, you will find that there were several terracotta figures of the mother goddess, where the figure is roughly of baked clay, and the clay itself is being molded to make the jewelry of the figure. So the figure is wearing bangles, the figure is wearing neck piece, and the figure is wearing a bindi. We have had the concept of a dot between our eyebrows for close to definitely more than 4,500 years. And if you believe the recent research after the excavations at Rakigadi, it could be as much as 7,000 years ago. So, this is a tradition that has been continuing in India for so long. And no matter how many invasions we have had, how many intrusive cultures have tried to control us, we have not left our bindi. The Indian woman has always taken pride in her bindi, and the Indian man has always taken pride in her tilak. A couple of years ago, I went to Peru, and I went to the museum. I went to the museum in Cusco, which was the capital of the Peruvian Empire at one point of time. And they had such a brilliant, such a varied, and such a rich culture. But now, if you see in the streets of Peru, you see no signs of that culture. If you go to the museum, you'll find a lot of cultural artifacts, you'll find a lot of cultural traditions. But in real life, where people live, you find very, very few remnants of the Incan culture, except maybe their love for colors. But India is the only living civilization. It's the only living civilization that has survived, that treats the divine in feminine form. And right now, we are on the first day of Navratri. So, first of all, I should have started off by wishing everybody a very happy Navratri, but it's not too late. And when you see the Murti of the Devi, starting from the depictions of the mother goddess during the Sindhu Saraswati civilization times, you will see that maybe the stylization of the goddess has changed, the attire has changed, the jewelry has changed, the facial features have changed. But one thing has remained constant in the depiction of the mother goddess in India for thousands of years now, as right from the time when we started making murtis of our goddesses, is the bindi. So where does the bindi come from? As you already might know, that the word bindi comes from bindu, the Sanskrit word, which means a point or a particle. Thousands of years ago, our rishis and our scholars and philosophers discovered that in our body there are concentrated energy points. They call those points chakras. And you know that we have different chakras in our body. The chakra between our eyes is called a ajna chakra. It is the chakra of consciousness. It is the chakra of thought. And that is the point where we are supposed to wear our bindi. But was the bindi always in this form? Was it always a velvet sticker? No, that is a matter of convenience, and it is a very recent, say 20, 30-year-old invention. As Archita said, her grandmother has worn a bindi for every single day of her life, but probably she may have moved to the velvet bindis only recently. Before that, every Indian woman used to wear kumkum, which you still get in temples and which you still find a lot of people using. Noted dancer, Kalaguru, and Padma Vibhushan Dr. Sonal Mansingh had once talked about this, and she said that there was a lot of science in putting the kumkum on one's forehead, whether it was for men or for women. First of all, the kumkum was made from purely herbal ingredients. It has tulasi, it had bhasma, it had a lot of herbs, and every single day a woman would wash her face or a man would wash his face, and after doing puja, after taking a bath and after doing puja, before doing puja, sorry, they would put a tilak or a bindi on their forehead using that kumkum. That Ayurvedic concoction would not only cool the Ajna chakra, it would protect it, and it would ensure that you don't get headaches. It would ensure that you had a feeling of calmness and serenity. And the kumkum would obviously wash off with steam or with sweat or steam or your daily activities. So in those days, the Indian men and women would wash their faces several times and they would reapply the kumkum or the tilak. And each time they did that, that act itself made them massage that point. It was kind of acupressure. And then they used the kumkum, which had some Ayurvedic ingredients to it. Nowadays, very few people put it. Maybe on festival days, we put that kind of kumkum. We put now these sticker bindis because they are more convenient. But we need to wear them because it is one tradition that has continued with us for thousands of years, and it is a tradition that has stayed with us through all the upheavals that India has faced, through the Islamic rule, through the British colonial rule, in Goa, the state where I come from, through 450 years of Portuguese rule. Hindu women have always held on to their bindi. Why was the bindi so important? Because it is the symbol of your identity. It is the symbol of your culture. It is the symbol of who you are deep down. Which is why it's heartening to me that young American Hindu teenagers are taking it upon themselves to protect the bindi and to say that we need to reclaim it. The bindi has become a topic of much conversation in the US. You may have heard, I'm pretty sure in school or wherever, about the dot busters, a gang that used to target Indian women, and they used to call themselves dot busters because the bindis used to be on the forehead of Indian women. And this was way back in the 70s, and it was a form of racism. But America has changed a lot now. You see Indian presence everywhere. Indians are considered the model minority. In every big or medium to big American city, you will find a Hindu temple. You will find an Indian grocery store. You will find Indian music, dance shows, music teachers, programs, everything. And through all this, the bindi has remained central to the Indian identity. I come from Goa. In Goa, the Portuguese tried very hard to convert the entire native Hindu population to Christianity. They destroyed their temples. In 2 years, 350 temples were destroyed each year. So 700 temples in two districts alone. People were forcibly converted by feeding them beef and, doing unspeakable things to them, torturing them. I talk about this on my talk on Goa Inquisition. But that's not relevant to today's topic. What is relevant is that when they tried to convert a Hindu tribe, their women said that they were not willing to convert because the Portuguese had told them that it is punishable by law to wear a bindi. And in those days, when there was a terrible inquisition, terrible court of inquisition in Goa, one of the many offenses that could lead you to this house of torture was wearing a bindi or tilak. Can you believe it? That if you just wear a dot between your eyebrows, or if you just wear a tilak, you could be dragged to a house of torture and literally tortured, physically tortured, or even killed. But even through this, the tribals of Goa, they held on to their bindi. So much so that the Portuguese government agreed that they could get a tattoo of a cross between their eyebrows. That was a compromise. They converted when they realized that they couldn't resist conversions, but they ensured that their women had crosses tattooed at the space, at the point of the Ajna Chakra, where the bindi used to be. This is a true story. Even today, if you find very old Christian tribals in Goa somewhere, women, you will find that between their eyebrows, they will have the cross tattooed, even now, after so many centuries. So the bindi has been with us for many, 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 many millennia. And it is sad that even in my lifetime, I am seeing people use it less and less. There was a time when no Hindu woman would dare to set out of the house or would even want to set out of the house without wearing a bindi. But now the sight of Indian women wearing a bindi at workplaces, at schools, at colleges is getting increasingly rare. And I share Archita's fear that someday, if this apathy does not stop, if we don't realize what bindi means to us, it will be just a cultural curio. Already, you see that the Hindus, for whom it's a very important cultural tradition, they are letting go of the bindi, but other people are using it as some kind of exotic cultural curio. So you have Gwen Stefani using it to launch one of her major songs. You find vague references to the bindi in popular culture in the US, like in, I think it's Family Guy, where the character, I forgot the name, Peter, he asks his neighbor that is the red dot on your wife's forehead a remote control button which you use to shut her up when you don't want to listen to her. This insulting, it's a cultural insult. And the sad part is, while we are very happy to cede the space and cede the bindi and make it as just another exotic cultural curio, like I don't know, some feather headdress or something like that, and let other people from other cultures use it without realizing its cultural, spiritual, and sociological significance. Our own women are letting go of the bindi. And as Archita very rightly said, people will ask you, and this happens even when I wear a sari, and even when I promote wearing a sari in India, a lot of people ask me, but what about men? Why shouldn't they wear Indian clothes? Why only women? Why do you expect only women to wear a sari? Again, my answer is the same as Archita put it today, that let us try to reclaim something that is still there with us to some extent. Once women take charge of their traditional attire, their bindi, men will follow. If the bindi is reclaimed, the tilak will follow. If the sari is reclaimed, the dhoti will follow. But let us not turn our cultural symbols into cultural curios. Let us not turn them into souvenirs that you buy at a museum shop when you're done seeing the museum and you talk about how things used to be a long time ago. Let's reclaim the bindi, because the bindi is our identity. A bindi, it's not just a dot. Let me end with again the same line. A bindi is not just a dot, it is the culmination of thousands of years of cultural thought. Thank you.
Shefali ji, thank you so much for joining us and for such deep thoughts. Like you said, in the US and I know all over the world, we see the bindi being appropriated and taken for pop culture, but none of those people wearing the bindi in that manner will ever stop to think of the weight that our ancestors carried in order to keep the bindi alive. And like you said, in this country, the Dot Busters campaign is still a fear for people walking in New Jersey. Wearing a bindi, it's a lot of people are accepting of it, but it's still very painful to see kind of the culture that the bindi, the negativity that gets fostered by the bindi. So thank you so much for joining us and for such beautiful thoughts. And we're so happy that you are one of our keynote speakers for the inaugural World Bindi Day event. So thank you very much. So next on our plate, Shoni Sherkar is one of the members of the CoHNA leadership team. And CoHNA stands for the Coalition of Hindus in North America. CoHNA focuses on the awareness and advocacy efforts for Hindus and by Hindus across North America. Shoni is also a full-time member of the Hindu Students' Council leadership team. And as a lifelong volunteer for Hindu causes, she's going to share a brief welcome message from CoHNA for why CoHNA has gotten involved with World Bindi Day. So namaste, Shoni.
Namaste. Thank you, Arnav. So namaskar, happy Navratri, and happy World Bindi Day. On behalf of the Coalition of Hindus of North America, I would like to welcome you all to our first ever World Bindi Day, a day in which we celebrate and learn about bindis and tilaks. CoHNA decided to get involved in and co-sponsor World Bindi Day along with Hindu Students' Council and Mission Bindi because it very clearly addresses all aspects of our mission. CoHNA's mission is to celebrate Hindu Dharma, remove misconceptions, tackle Hindu phobia, educate our community on Hindu Dharma, and make an impact on how Hindu Dharma in India are spoken about in the mainstream media. Another reason we are so excited about this initiative is because it has been founded, created, and promoted completely by students and young people. This is especially important to note because we so often think of Hindu Dharma as being a tradition that comes from the older generation and gets transferred to the younger generation. However, this initiative, as I mentioned, is completely created and executed by high school students, college students, and young adults. During this event, I hope you have already learned some aspects of the bindi and tilak that you did not know before. And if you haven't yet, we still have plenty of more wonderful speakers who will share more with you. We also hope that this event instills pride in you and in your dharma and in your heritage. We hope that World Bindi Day inspires you not only to wear a bindi or a tilak today, but also to be able to wear one any day of the year with pride. And when people ask you what it means, you'll be able to explain the significance of the bindi with confidence and delight. I personally was subjected to Hinduphobic comments about the bindi I wear on my forehead on social media. On HSC's Facebook page, a social media troll wrote a comment asking about what happened if someone pushed the button on my forehead, similar to the example given by Shefali Vaidyaji earlier. However, with initiatives like this, we increase our confidence and our ability to stand up to Hinduphobic comments and trolls like these, whether they are on social media or in person. We look forward to many, many years of World Bindi Day to come. And once again, on behalf of CoHNA, we welcome you to our very first ever World Bindi Day. Namaskar, and Arnavji, back to you.
Thank you, Shoni. So this is an exciting World Bindi Day for me because I get to be surrounded by such powerful and well-spoken women, and it's such a pleasure to kind of have the privilege of being the only male representation on this panel. I guess the next speaker in particular really excites me. It's our second keynote address for the inaugural World Bindi Day. And the speaker is going to be Srimati Priti Upalaji. So Priti Upalaji is a political editor and analyst, and as well as a former Miss India who's based in Los Angeles. She's an expert on geopolitics, conflict resolution, international diplomacy, and religion. She's the host of a radio show called The Eternal Hour. And as an international public speaker, Preeti ji gets invited to events all over the world at many panels and global think tanks. And I know Preeti ji has been starting to get more involved with Hindu efforts across CoHNA and HSC in the US. So I'm very excited to have Preeti ji join us today, and she's going to be discussing a little bit of the symbolic and historical meaning of the Bindi. So namaste and welcome, Preeti ji.
Namaste, and namaste, CoHNA and Mission Bindi, and to all your wonderful audience around the world. Happy Navaratri. I just want to start my talk by wishing all of you what a wonderful festival event, and we are so honored to celebrate it. And I think maybe in 2020 it's doubly special considering everything that's going on. I consider myself a very privileged person because my whole life, especially my childhood, has been one where I got to travel around the world and experience different cultures and live in so many different countries because of my father's profession. So I was born actually in Dubai, of all places. I was born in the Middle East. And for the first 15 years of my life, I lived in all various Middle Eastern countries. These were Islamic theocracies where another religion is not acceptable by law. So from a very, very young age, I understood this notion of where you need to preserve your identity, your faith, and your culture deep within yourself, because you were not able to externally showcase it to the world. Whereas, I mean, to the point where you aren't even supposed to have an altar at home. Now, many decades later, things have obviously changed. How deep, that's another issue. But my oldest memory of the Bindi is watching my mother. So my mother, she always had the Bindi. I think she even wore it outside every day almost, and she had the big velvet one, the deep maroon color, and I think she had a nice collection. So as a child, I just used to marvel at her, and she's a very traditional woman. She always wore these beautiful saris. She sort of proudly carried her uh, civilizational history with her. And so that was 15 years. And then obviously I moved to Europe and then Australia, and now here in America. So I've looked at India and Sanatan Dharma from that lens, which is interesting, I think, when you have lived across or you've traveled to many places and you see our culture, whether showcased either by Indians and Sanatanis or by other people too, because there is a lot of that happening and has been happening for several decades. I think it gives you an interesting worldview or interesting perspective. So when I talk and write about Indian history and especially Dharma and Hinduism, I always keep that global perspective in view to see also how the world views us too. Now, for me, I look at a bindi as an embodiment of civilizational wisdom. It's a 5,000 or 6,000 year old manifestation of our ancient history and our wisdom almost. And it's all manifest in a single point. And the bindu, of course, is the single point as well. It's literally means the point. And there's a bindu point meditations that you can do, which absolutely actually just focuses on that point. So I think for me, I've always seen the bindi as that focal point. We have such an incredible, intricate culture, vast and rich, but you can all sort of bring it down to that one point, at least for women, and I must say, over all these thousands of years, it's lasted, and hopefully it will last until the very end of time. But no matter where you go, you always people know exactly when a woman wears a Bindi, they know she's Indian, most likely, and they know that she's a Sanatani too. Now, it's been uh, amazing to, I think, travel to all over. I've been to almost 100 countries at this point, and it's interesting to see, number one, people's reaction to me when I have worn it. Even without it, actually, people will all they just look at me and they say, "You're Indian," and then they spew out all these amazing things that they have to say about India. So I've had a very positive experience about what being Indian means out there in the world. um, but that's one thing. The other one is also when people have worn it themselves and how they view it. And it's nice to see, you go to, different countries. I mean, whether it's Africa or Europe, even here in America, and you do see, non-Indian women, non-Hindu women adorn it, and some proudly, by and large, that's the case. Obviously, it's very popular in pop culture as well, whether it's in the film or movies, print, advertising, and so on. As long as it's done with respect and some acknowledgement and reverence for source, I like that. If done, if appropriated properly, it could actually make it more widely known. Sometimes, people like Madonna, even. I mean, she sort of made the henna very hip at one point. I remember when I was in school, she was really into the Indian culture. So I think done with respect and in the right, with the right intention, in the right space. Uh, Obviously, it's a good thing for us and the world at large. It doesn't always work out that way, but we can only hope that moving forward, um, that it is sort of cherished and protected. Which actually brings me to the next point of youth in India and around the world uh, needing to really acknowledge, I think, their own history and be proud of it. There is there's a lot to be proud of. This is the oldest living continuing civilization in the world. In a few years' time, we will also be the most populous country. So I always think the oldest civilization, and it's the most populous now. What have we done right? What can the world learn from us? Because in actuality, we must have done a lot right to still be here, and not just be here, but thrive, and and showcase our influence, and I think, who we are, and our worldview and philosophy to the world, which is more and more extremely appealing, I think, to the West. But I think with the youth in particular, there is a need to understand that it can be hip, it can be cool. Certainly, the West many times looks at it as something that's hip and cool, and I don't see why a young person should at all ever be shy or reserved, or ashamed or anything about their own culture. Because guess what? Every other culture in the world, every other faith, they proudly wear aspects of their tradition, and they're proud of it, and they can speak about it. But for some reason, for us, I don't know whether it's ignorance, or maybe it's just not our way to sort of proudly gloat about our identity and maybe our heritage. But at the end of the day, it doesn't help us. It doesn't serve us, because there is so much history behind that dot. And yet, if you're not able to articulate and share that, how will the rest of the world know? So I feel that as we move into new India, it's already started. I see a different trajectory for the country now, and a good one. I think it's a long time coming. Finally, we sort of going back to the real superpower that we are here to be. And there's a big resurgence, I think, of our identity and who we are. And I'm so thrilled because of that. But with the new India also comes you having to hold on to who you are, where you've been, where you've come from. And it sadly, in today's world, if you blink, if you take your eye off the target, in a moment things get wiped out. We've seen this with so many other civilizations that no longer remain. They were around for thousands of years, and in maybe 2 or 3 decades, completely gone. The entire There's no trace left, and there's that's almost all the civilizations that no longer exist. We're the only ones that have survived. But we cannot take anything for granted, because these things have a strange way of kind of infiltrating and manifesting itself. So that, I think, we must hold on. And the Bindi, just like many other aspects of our culture, are symbolic of who we are and where we've come from. And also they tell the world our contribution to everything's art, philosophy, science, religion, of course, spirituality, all of these amazing things. I think it's the perfect uh, kind of manifestation, or symbol, I should say. Sanatan Dharma and Bharat, these are, or this is, I should say, the most tolerant, open, plural, syncretic country and culture and faith in the world, where we absorb everything around us. We take the best from everything else that's available, and yet we hold on also to our essence, and this ability to just weave and take in different philosophies, traditions, ways of being, thought forms, and really uphold it, and sort of almost take it to the next level in a way that's very unique to our culture, right? So we do that with other faiths. We obviously, we're very accepting, but I think we must never turn our backs away from our own faith, because this often happens in the middle of being all inclusive. You end up excluding yourself, and I see aspects of this happening. um, Soft power. I speak a lot about soft power, and I think India actually has the most intricate and the best soft power in the world. I don't think we exercise it quite as much as we could. Uh, it should be the most, I mean, maybe in the public domain, certainly it's very recognizable. Anything Indian, the world knows this is Indian or this is Hindu. But I think from a point of political exercising of that soft power and media, PR, brand India or brand Dharma, we are not doing a very good job. But the Bindi really is the perfect utility of soft power. I think one that we haven't quite used, or we haven't used intentionally. Obviously, in spiritual communities around the world, the yoga, Ayurveda, meditation, um, philosophical uh, groups and circles everywhere, you see a lot of women wearing the bindi. Caucasian women or non-Indian women, they're very excited about it, and they're proud of it. But we must obviously, we are very accepting, but the point is for us to set our narrative. We must have the monopoly of what it means, and I think we must share that. And that's on us. I think nobody's going to do it for you, or perhaps actually they might do it for you, but they might not do it in the right way. So you might end up with a distorted, half-baked narrative, just like so many other things, as we are seeing in the yoga community and so on. Um, I mean, it's wonderful that the world obviously wants to appropriate it, but I think we must be the gatekeepers and holders of the knowledge and what it means, and it's our job to showcase it. Uh, I, Dharma is under assault in many ways. Geopolitically, certainly, India is under assault in many ways. I think for us to really uphold our identity through all of this is the most important thing, and never lose faith of what it means. I think you're the third eye, that's really the higher consciousness, and your inner soul, and your connection to the divine. This is the most important thing in life anyway. From a Hindu perspective, that's the reason for living, the reason for existing, is that process of self-actualization towards moksha. And I think the Bindi is a pivotal part of that. Um, And so I know for myself, I recently ordered a beautiful set of quite fancy bindis. So I want to wear them out more and to events and so on. And being in Hollywood, this is a good place to do that, certainly. So I wish all of you a wonderful World Bindi Day. And I hope you proudly wear your bindis and you're proud of your identity and who you are and where you come from and what your heritage and lineage has given the world. It's incomparable in many ways. So thank you so much. Pleasure to share with you. Namaste.
Thank you, Preetiji, for those wonderful remarks. We'll have Preetiji join us again in a short bit for Q&A. But we've had some very wonderful talks precede us as part of this inaugural World Bindi Day. So as President of Hindu Students Council, I would like to share kind of a few thoughts of the meaning of World Bindi Day for Hindu youth across North America and across the world. So as I mentioned, I'm the president of Hindu Students Council, and without going into too much depth, Hindu Students Council is a platform for Hindu youth that are growing up in the US, Canada, that want to find a community of Hindus that want to discuss issues that affect them, right? It's not just issues of religion, but also issues of awareness, issues that affect them in their daily lives, at their school, at their work, whatever it might be. And so, what's very interesting is kind of to understand the story of Archita and how she came up with this idea for World Bindi Day. So, I'd like to kind of give a little bit of insight to how Archita brought this event to us, right? So a few months ago, Archita sent an email from Mission Bindi to Hindu Students Council with this idea for a World Bindi Day, and we immediately kind of took grasp of it in the sense that we knew that this was going to be something big. We didn't have any questions about what she was aiming for. It was very clear how World Bindi Day would have an impact across the world. But as soon as we had a call with her, the first thing you can tell is that Archita's story is the story of kind of every young Hindu in North America, right? So getting bullied for, your Hindu symbols and your values, and you're being stereotyped for them, right? You're seeing non-Hindu kids constantly pick on you and show kind of a lack of understanding and a lack of willingness to learn about your culture and your faith. But then at the same time, you see other Hindu students that are constantly turning away from that and not giving you any support as a Hindu when you're getting bullied at school, right? There's no solidarity in that sense, right? And then at the same time, your teachers, your professors have the same misconceptions about Hindu Dharma that you're trying to fight yourself, right? So your professors, your teachers, they don't understand the concept of the Bindi. They don't understand Hindu Dharma besides some keywords like caste or curry or cows, whatever it might be, right? So on all of these fronts, Archita's story is kind of what every Hindu youth across North America faces. And so as soon as we had this call, I asked Archita, on this call, like what part of, how are you involved in the Hindu community? I want to learn more about you. And she immediately said, I go to Chinmaya Mission. And that's when I kind of drew a connection with Archita, because I'm a K through 12 graduate of Chinmaya Mission. I studied there, and I owe a lot of my upbringing and my kind of commitment to Hindu Dharma to Chinmaya Mission, right? Chinmaya Mission does a lot for kids across North America. But still, one thing for me was missing as I went through college and I graduated. Where's my community of people that are on campus that want to talk about these Hindu issues, right? I can go on Sundays to Chinmaya and talk about these issues. I can understand some of the issues that get misunderstood from kind of a Vedic or like a Gita standpoint. But what about kind of issues that my peers are talking about at school, right? What about me immersing myself with my colleagues, my classmates, etc., and being able to engage with them on my Hindu identity without kind of having two separate lives? So this is where World Bindi Day and the concept of the Bindi is kind of the ultimate symbol of what's happening to Hindu youth across North America. We're seeing an erosion of kind of our culture as non-Hindus start to take up these symbols as symbols of fun, as symbols of pop culture, like Shefali ji said, as symbols for Gwen Stefani to have in a music video. But there's none of those folks are going to carry the weight that the Bindi actually represents for people that were persecuted for wearing it, that were attacked in New Jersey during the 70s and the 80s, right? So this is where Hindu Students Council seeks to build a community of students exactly like Archita, who have that pride in their Hindu identity, but don't yet have a platform, don't yet have a community of other students from around the world that they can connect with and discuss issues beyond just religion, right? Discuss issues of awareness, advocacy, and most importantly of integration. How do we integrate ourselves as Hindus into our daily lives? How do we integrate that Hindu piece into my work life, into my school life, into my professional life? How do I not leave it so that they're two separate identities and I quietly practice being a Hindu at home, but then I take off the bindi as soon as I'm ready to step out into the real world, right? So the bindi is kind of the quintessential example. And so, I guess the concluding remark I have on this is, I'm extremely happy that Archita has taken this initiative full steam and brought this to HSE, CoHNA, Mission Bindi, bringing this partnership together. And, if you're a student watching this and you're kind of a Hindu at school, you deal with pressure and misunderstanding, and you see people posting negativity towards Hindu Dharma on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it might be, come get in touch with us, because people like Archita are here to help make sure that we have a vibrant Hindu youth community. All over the country, there's high school students starting chapters, Hindu Students Council chapters, where we're going to support and help put on events that showcase pride in the bindi, but then also other issues that affect us as Hindus that we should take a stand, like Preeti ji said, and kind of be proud of our identity and not lose that footing, right? In a multicultural world, it doesn't mean that we should give up our identity and kind of assimilate completely. It means we should be proud of our identity and what we bring to the table. So, if you're a youth, please join us. Please reach out to Hindu Students Council and Mission Bindi and get involved, because at the end of the day, that's what will motivate you and your peers and then the next generation following you. So with that, I think that kind of wraps up the majority of the talks for today. So I'd like to invite Preeti ji and Archita back to the video, and I guess while we wait for some questions to get posed, and Shoani, feel free to put the questions up on the screen if you see any good ones for us to ask. So, okay, we do have a good question. So how do you explain to other quote unquote South Asian or Hindu people that it's not okay to treat the bindi as aesthetic? So Preeti ji or Archita, do one of you have thoughts on that?
Yes. So I would explain to other South Asian or Hindu people that the history of the bindi, like people on this panel have been discussing, Shefali ji, Preeti ji, and I would tell the meaning of the bindi and how it's relevant to the Hindu scriptures we have today. Preeti ji, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think one of the big issues with our young people, they don't know about their own culture enough to actually articulate it. So they get asked these questions, they either don't have any interest or they don't have the knowledge, and they're not even able to come up with a good sort of response for the question. So that's really the problem. And then because it becomes a cycle, then they're like, this is just too much trouble, I'm not going to bother at all. And that's how they sort of kind of move away from it. So important to learn about your culture, and obviously that's up to parents and community, and probably religious institutions as well.
Yeah, and we've heard some very heartening stories about I would say disheartening stories about what the bindi has caused for Hindus in terms of the pain and violence and suffering that we've seen for millennia wearing the bindi. So it's just irresponsible in today's world for people to take that as a fashion accessory and not consider the deep meaning behind it. So yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question from Arushi. So I guess while we wait for other questions to kind of percolate, Preeti ji and Archita, I guess I'll pose this to you, Archita. We want World Bindi Day to kind of be an event that we host every year. And obviously with COVID, this year it's going to be virtual. We're hoping that people live stream and share pictures, but next year, and for people that want to get involved with this initiative specifically, how do you suggest they get involved over the next year? And what is your vision in exactly 1 year from today, what World Bindi Day should look like?
Yes, exactly 1 year from today, I picture World Bindi Day where Hindus, literally Hindus all over the world, wear the bindi, and they come to different places in the United States that have chapters, World Bindi Day chapters, one in New York, one in Sydney, one in Bangalore, kind of like that. Can you repeat the second question, second part of the question?
Yeah, I mean, I like the train of thought that you have. So like what will those chapters be doing, right? So when we have World Bindi Day in 1 year, what do you envision it'll look like with those different cities?
I envision us just starting to celebrate with live events, and just Hindus all over the world recognize the meaning of the Bindi and how like it's so ancient and how it's so important to Hinduism.
So would you, if you were picking between the main World Bindi Day location to be between, the Sydney Opera House and like Times Square, which one would you pick, to have kind of the first in-person World Bindi Day, where everyone is kind of wearing bindis and tilaks, and we even have, talks exactly like these ones, but obviously a little bit more in-person engagement. So, what would your dream city be for you?
Times Square.
Times Square?
New York City.
And
nice
so,
and close by.
And so Preeti ji, I guess, what are your thoughts in terms of how we can get more people to take note of World Bindi Day and, for over the next year, kind of build up this momentum so that we keep what we're building today and keep the progress going? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a good point. I think it also ties in with just Sanatan Dharma in general. The thing is that this is a very cool, hip, dynamic, and vibrant culture, faith, tradition. So people need to realize that this is usually religions can be oppressive or dark and whatever, but I think ours is that one religion where it's all cool and hip. Somewhere along the way, we have lost that narrative, probably because we were not in control of it. And I think there are other actors who have tried to make it into something darker instead of the light that it is. I think part of that is claiming that narrative and showing the world, this is colorful, this is open, vibrant, it's positive, it's peace and happiness and joy, not oppression, repression, and so on. And it's ironic that you look at everything else that's repressive out there, and there seems to be more. They take issue with us rather than what's actually problematic. But again, it's a agenda narrative. We are very successful and wealthy in this country, but we don't put our money where our mouth is, and our community does not support and fund these sorts of causes or educational causes and so on. So I think there needs to be a real shift in consciousness in that way. But I think the key would be to it is cool and attractive and even sexy, if you want to say that, but like that should be the image of everything dharmic, and India and all of that, because that's really the reality of it. For some reason, I think the perception or the at least the perception that some people are trying to create is that it's the opposite of that. And they're winning now for some reason, because again, we are nowhere in the scene to counter it. So I think it's showing the world how joyful and positive it is, including the Bindi.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have a couple questions that have come in the chat. Let's do Parth's first, and then we can go back to Shobhaji's question. So Parth has asked, one of the things that we've alluded to is the cultural appropriation of the Bindi. So, on World Bindi Day, we're talking about wearing and re-owning the Bindi. Do you guys think that's enough to dispel the idea of the Bindi as a fashion accessory? What else can we be doing besides just physically wearing the Bindi?
I think that having just the start is what we need. Just by wearing the Bindi is what we need right now. And then we can start thinking about how to stop the culture appropriation. So wear the Bindi and then work on moving on to the culture appropriation deal. Preeti, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I think also writing and speaking about it, because we have obviously great writers, thinkers, speakers. They talk about many aspects of our culture and tradition and history, and politics and all of that good stuff. But these are the aspects that we should also, people, we could, I mean, I could totally imagine somebody doing an amazing TED talk on this, what it means. And I think that would get a lot of eyeballs. You could write a million pieces on this. It's just that we don't. But it could be done. It should be done. So bring the awareness out, make it hip. I mean, there are people who are speaking and writing on the hijab, for God's sake, and that's questionable. And yet that gets eyeballs because it is an aspect of their culture that they're sort of propagating out there. Well, what about our culture, which is actually very liberating? Why are we not sort of pushing that out there? So I think we should speak and write about it. And cultural, when a non-Indians or non-Hindus wear it, that's not a bad thing. I think this a notion of insider outsider has also changed for us, which is good. It's not like you're an outsider if you're not us. It's not that. I think anyone who has respect and reverence and understands the power behind it, they are our allies, and they could be they could also be great ambassadors for this, as we have seen in other aspects. So that's a good thing. It's just that we need to make sure that they can appropriate it. In fact, I think we want everybody to be, if the whole world wore bindis, and that's a good thing. It's just that they should do it in the right way and not in a hollow way. And they should understand maybe the history and the power behind it. So as long as that's there, I think it's fine, and it's good that the world is, they should be aping us, because the rest of the world apes the West. But I think India really has a lot of wisdom to offer at this current point in time. So that's something good.
And when the violence in New Zealand that had happened, where a gunman opened fire at the mosque and the whole country kind of rallied to wear the hijab and show solidarity, right? I think that's exactly what Hindus need to make the bindi and the tilak, in terms of people should understand the weight that it carries for Hindus. And like you said, Preetiji, I totally agree that non-Hindus should wear it, but it's our duty to educate them on what it means, so that when they wear it, they're our allies. They're not just appropriating that and making it tougher for us to call ourselves Hindu. So Shobha Swamiji asks, how do we make sure that we don't have two separate identities where we might wear the bindi and take these pictures at home, right? With COVID, it's a little tough to go out and maybe take the picture in public like we want to, but how do we make sure that part of this effort is merging that identity with, having a singular identity, not letting it be two split identities? And Archita, maybe, this goes into like your experience in the classroom, right?
Yes. So here's the thing. You can't have one single identity. There's always going to be two, one from your family and one at school. But you're going to have to realize that you're going to have to retain whatever your ancestors passed on to you. And wherever you go, you're going to have to merge that. Merge both of them and wear the bindi.
And Preetiji, based on your experience, traveling the world and giving talks, how do we get, a lot of Hindus, like myself included, we might have jobs, and then kind of our Hindu dharma is a passion that we have on the side, but there's not a lot of Hindus going into actual professional careers related to Hindu dharma, right? And someone like you that's actually speaking on this on an ongoing basis and integrating that with what you do with your writing and your talks on international relations and that sort of thing. How do we get that identity integrated into people's daily lives and get more people, you were talking about like kind of the funding aspect, right? Like our community's not funding these initiatives, these great initiatives like World Bindi Day. It's right now it's being done entirely from the pocket of Mission Bindi, CoHNA, and HSC. So how do we get the community to buy in and start integrating, so that it's not just a side hobby that we're doing on the weekends?
Yeah, we are so busy, becoming doctors and professors and, scientists and CEOs, and yet we forget about these things. And you look at other communities and they're doing much more to propagate whatever they're about, and sort of push that idea into the world. I think also bringing awareness of all of this to the whether it's older people or the people who have the means and so on. I think it's a question of awareness. Once they know what's at stake, I think they will really be honest about it with themselves and say this must be saved. And I've spoken to some for other Hindu initiatives. You meet with some very people with high net worth and so on, and you notice that when you share the truth, and sometimes the truth isn't pretty, but when you do tell them, hey, there's a lot of stake at stake here, we are under assault and so on, they get it, and then they are just inspired to do what they can, and also sometimes towards the last quarter of their life, they feel, look, I've done very well for myself in my life. I have a lot of time and funds here. Let me donate it. Let me invest in something. They're looking to invest sometimes, and the right project isn't in front of them, then they go find something else, and or they go fund chairs to the wrong person. This is happening all over. It's a disaster. So I think the people are ready. It's all there. I think the dots need to be connected. So yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done, I think, in that area.
Yeah, I agree. And what's optimistic about this is, the very first step, I think, is getting the Bindi on, like Archita said, and making sure we take that very first step. And then these questions and these discussions are just going to keep propagating over the next, this is a real movement that you started, Archita, and, it's a real privilege for myself and Preeti ji to kind of be here next to you and get a chance to be part of this inaugural event with you. So I think, we're going to wrap up the Q&A session, and this kind of concludes the main part of the event. So again, Preeti ji and Shefali ji, thank you both for joining us and delivering such excellent, kind of keynotes on what is the Bindi to us and what's kind of the legacy and the weight behind it. I think it really paints a picture of why World Bindi Day is so important. And now what we're going to do is just hand it over to Archita. Archita, as kind of the engineer of this whole operation, where World Bindi Day is your brainchild, it's only fitting that you kind of give the vote of thanks and share whatever parting words you think are kind of fit for World Bindi Day. And with that, we'll wrap up the event. So Archita, it's over to you.
Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you to all of those who joined today's inaugural World Bindi Day. We are very happy and proud of your support. Thank you to Shefali ji for giving such inspiring and good insights for the Bindi and enlightening us on the history and relevance of the Bindi. We absolutely agree with your thoughts that the Bindi is not just a dot, but it's our identity, and we will remember that. So thank you for your time. And thank you for CoHNA from CoHNA and for your help and your support. Without you and without Nikunj ji from CoHNA, this support wouldn't have been possible. World Bindi Day wouldn't have been possible. So thank you for handholding and making this a grand success. Thank you to Preeti ji for agreeing to come over within a short notice and sharing your insights. Very inspiring as well. Just a huge thank you for sharing your perspectives. And thank you, Arnav, and the rest of Hindu Students Council for your help. All of this would have been just ideas, and it wouldn't have been brought to life without your support. So I will be going to college soon in 2 years, and hopefully I'm happy to say that Hindu Students Council is active around all different kinds of colleges. And HSC and CoHNA did wonders in this initiative. Without them, this event would have never taken place. We had a great team, and I thank Nikunj ji, CoHNA, Sheila, Arnav, Raj. Such a great team working and getting this International Day out. We're making history here, and we all are part of the same. Thank you again to all who are watching, and this World Bindi Day is just a start.